Hello and welcome to Bake with Jen, the cooking show where I attempt to bake cookies. I'm not a very good baker, but we're going to give it a go. I asked you guys to submit some questions on Instagram and there were so many. I have like literally a bowl of them. I printed them out. There's like 180 questions here and I thought instead of sitting down and answering them, why not do something while I answer them? So we're gonna bake and so I hope you enjoy this. We're making vanishing oatmeal raisin cookies and that might not sound very exciting to a lot of you, but they are delicious and I'm all about promoting a positive relationship with food, mind and body. And so when I was thinking about filming a cooking show while talking about my experience with eating disorder, I was like, is this weird? But then I was like, no, we're trying to show real life. And this is something that I'm able to do now because I am well and I enjoy doing it because I not only bake it, but I now eat it. So I hope this encourages you to keep on fighting too. Let's get into it. I need a trusty little apron. One moment. Here we go. It's on backwards, but you know what? That's fine. We're gonna wear it backwards because that is okay. So while I'm getting some things organized, I am going to answer a question because I need to sort out this butter situation and cut it up, 225 grams. So let me lucky dip. This will be part one. We won't get through them all now. I'm gonna film another video where I answer a few more, but let's see what we can start with. Okay, lucky dip, Jen, lucky dip. How to start trying again? Great question. We're gonna leave this one, can't see that, there. So a big thing for me when I was finding it hard to start again, you know, there were moments where I felt like I was doing really well and then maybe something happened and I felt like I slipped up or I was falling backwards. And a really important thing for me, shouldn't be chucking around a knife, was looking back on my reasons to recover. And I know this doesn't work for everyone, but this is from my own lived experience. I found looking over reasons to recover really helpful because it reminded me of why I was fighting. And in the moments where I struggled to find those myself, I would find someone that I felt like I could trust, and that was often my mum, and I'd talk to her and say, hey, look, I'm having a really tough time. And although that's easier said than done a lot of the time, it's such an important step, telling someone that you need more support, telling them that you feel like you're maybe not making as much progress as you want to be, or that the thoughts are still really overtaking your mind. It's really important that you pass that information on because you don't have to do this alone. And I love the saying, a problem shared is a problem halved. And I think when you tell someone how you're feeling, they're able to support you through that. You know, no one knows how you're feeling without you telling them. And so in terms of wanting to start trying again or get back on track, I encourage you to tell someone because they can help you do that. I encourage you to write a list of reasons to recover, make a vision board, and plan something that excites you. I know when you're unwell, it can be really hard to find anything that excites you, but finding something to look forward to can be so, so helpful. It's a goal, a practical goal to work towards. And the moments of, you know, when your mind's playing tricks and telling you you must engage in this behavior or something terrible is gonna happen, ask yourself, is engaging in this behavior gonna get me closer to my goal? And I think the answer will probably be no. And hopefully that may be enough to help you stop or at least think and reflect on it before you engage in it. Okay, so I've softened up the butter. I'm gonna put that in the bowl and I also need to add, with my trusty little recipe that my mum's laminated, I need to add brown sugar and raw sugar. 1 cup brown sugar. Let me answer another question while I do this. What did you find most useful in recovery? I think being open and honest, although it was probably one of the most difficult things, especially because I was fighting an eating disorder that's manipulative and secretive and doesn't want support or help from anyone that gets in its way. When I was open and honest about how I was feeling, I received the most help or better help because again, you know, the people around you aren't psychics unless you tell them what's happening to support you through that. So it's really important to be open and honest. So that was a big thing for me, being transparent, being vulnerable. Trying to focus on my own journey and my own recovery. At the end of the day, I was the only one that could get better for me, and so focusing on what, you know, I don't know, Sophie was doing on the other side of the table wasn't going to help me because I was on my own journey. So staying in my lane, as Millie, who I run support groups, likes to say. Having a good support network around me. Again, I think this is a really important thing, and I was really lucky to have you know, an incredibly supportive family to help me through this really difficult time. But having them there made a real big difference. And so finding those people is important. And it doesn't need to be lots of people. It also doesn't need to be your family. It could be, you know, the school nurse or a teacher at school that you really get on well with, or your neighbor. Just finding someone that you can trust is really important. And also quotes. I've often said that quotes are able to speak the words I struggle to speak myself. Also journaling. I did a lot of journaling, and that was incredibly beneficial because I found when I got it out on paper, it was no longer in my head, and so it did give me some sense of freedom from those thoughts, and a place to confide completely. And in the moments where I was feeling a little bit more on top of things, I'd share that with my parents to kind of give them better understanding of how I was doing, but that was a big thing for me. I'm gonna have to get the beater out now. Okay, that is looking nice and creamy. Now I need to break 2 eggs in it. Before I do that, I'm going to pick, I wish you guys could pick one for me, but I'm gonna pick a question. There's literally heaps of them. They look tiny, but there's like, I cut them out as if they were like the actual Instagram boxes. Imagine if I dropped a question in my cookies. Would you rather have sausage fingers or carrot toes? I'd probably rather carrot toes because you do lots with your fingers, and I feel like if they were sausages, it would make things a lot more difficult. Is there a specific therapy that helped you with your mental illness? So I want to make it clear that it's going to be different for everyone. What worked for me might not necessarily work for you, vice versa. So it's really important you find what works for you personally, and please talk to your medical healthcare professional about this. But from my lived experience, I personally, for my own journey, found DBT, CBT, and exposure response therapy extremely, extremely helpful. I was also medicated. I know that's a touchy topic for some people, but for me, it really supported me on my journey. I had really bad OCD that started before my anorexia, and when I had anorexia, my OCD got worse and more eating disorder focused, I guess, in terms of my rituals, thoughts, and compulsions. But I found exposure response therapy really helpful. I started that when I was in the psych ward with my psychologist, and it was about being exposed to the anxiety head-ons, and that was incredibly important. I'm sure you can imagine how anxiety provoking that was, doing the exact thing my illness didn't want me to do, but it was so, so helpful. And it ended up being one of my main lessons that I learned, that anxiety is temporary. It always passes. Yes, it's an incredibly uncomfortable feeling, but it's just a feeling, and that thoughts don't equal reality. Okay, we're gonna break this egg. It's the deepest chat I've ever had while I'm baking. And do you know how cool it is to be able to like bake? I actually don't do it a whole lot because I'm not like someone that loves to bake. And I've got eggshell in there. But just the fact that I'm able to bake and eat the baking is such a massive thing, because when I was unwell, I would bake a lot because I was obsessed with food and not eat it. We need 2 eggs, minus the shells. Let's get one more of these while I sort out the vanilla essence. I'm probably gonna miss an ingredient because I'm so invested in this conversation. How do you stop missing your eating disorder? So this was a big fear of mine, that I was gonna miss my eating disorder. I was terrified of what my life was gonna be without it. I didn't know if I could live life without it. I was terrified I was gonna miss it completely and the control it gave me. But when I got to a place of wellness, I realized that, you know, that was all a false sense of control, and actually that life without an eating disorder was so much better. And one of the activities I did to combat these thoughts was I got a piece of paper like this, and I drew a line down the middle and a line across the top, so a T-chart. And on one side I wrote what my eating disorder is giving me, and on the other side what a life free of my eating disorder would give me. And turns out my eating disorder was not giving me a whole lot, and that life without an eating disorder was going to give me so much more. I think as you get better, you just don't miss it, because life is so much better without it. And as I said, that was a massive fear of mine, but like, how can you miss something that's so miserable? You just don't. You realize that life is so much better. I'm gonna beat this. Like you're gonna beat your eating disorder, or your OCD, or your mental illness. I'm now mixing the dry ingredients in another bowl. That's one. Oh no. Oh. Pay attention, Jen, pay attention. 1.5. Okay. Let's pick another question from the question box. Oh, they really want to get into my cookies. I love this question. I've answered this a few times, but I'll answer it again. And my answer will probably be different than it has been before. If there is one thing you could tell your younger self, what would it be? I would, where's the baking soda? How cute are these jars? My sister put the labels on them. Oh, you can't really see them. I would tell my younger self that she's amazing, that she's unique, that she's beautiful, and that she's going to be okay. I think I've said that before, but I think when I went into my fight or my battle, I didn't know what was going to happen. I thought I was going to be unwell forever. And so to be able to go back to my younger self and say, hey Jen, yeah, maybe you're going to go through a really difficult time, but you'll be okay, would have been such a powerful thing. I think I would have also told her to make sure that she talks and shares how she's feeling. As I said before, you know, eating disorders are very, manipulative, secretive illnesses, and I'm such a big believer in speaking out and sharing how you're feeling, because people can only help you with what information you give them. And so I would have gone back to younger Jen. I would say, make sure you tell everyone, make sure you're open, you're honest, tell your eating disorder, shut up and tell people how you're feeling. And also really remind her to stay in her own lane. Eating disorders are very competitive illnesses, and I spent a lot of time focusing on other people and other people's journeys when I really needed to be looking within and focusing on myself. And when I finally started to do that, I saw a lot more change happen. And so reminding her of that, and also telling younger Jen that whatever she's faced with in life, she'll be strong enough to get through. I often tell myself that now, I can get through anything because I've got through, hopefully, the most difficult thing I'll ever have to fight. I'm yet to jump out of an aeroplane or bungee jump with that theory in mind, but maybe someday. If I can fight an eating disorder, an OCD, mental illness in general, then surely I can bungee jump. How was your hospital experience, and did you have a favourite nurse? So I think I've said this before, but I'd love to do a different video on my hospital experience because I can't really sum it up in 2 minutes. But yes, I had a couple of favourite nurses. I remember at the time there was a couple of nurses that were quite young. I was like 14, 15, 16, 17 when I was in and out of hospital over those years, and there were a couple of nurses that were doing their placement, so it means that they were in like their second or third year of university and were working on the wards to get experience. And so there were a couple of young ones. One was called Alex, who I actually bump into every now and then and saw probably about 1.5 years ago, and she was really cool. Like, I just idolized her. But there were definitely a few of them. And it's so cool to be able to see them now and talk to them now as the well person I am. I bumped into a few of them. I still spend a bit of time at Starship Hospital, and so I do run into them every now and then. But yeah, having good nurses made a huge difference. And I'm not saying they were all great. There were some that drove me up the wall and I really didn't bond with well, or weren't really empathetic or understanding of what it was like to fight an eating disorder. And some that perhaps didn't really care, but there were some real treasures in there that made my journey a lot easier. I was in the general pediatric ward where they keep makes me sound like I'm an animal, where they look after young adults that have an eating disorder, so under 17-year-olds in the children's hospital. And then I was also in the child and adolescent psychiatric unit, and I had some amazing nurses down there. I recently got my hospital notes back, and reading through those, I was reminded how incredible they were. And again, at the time, I thought everyone was out to get me, and no one had my best interest in mind, when actually that was the furthest thing from the truth. They were there to support me and believed in me 100%, and my notes have shown that. In my notes, I read that every night, a nurse, depending on who was on, would sit with me and do an activity for the day that helped me work on myself, my relationship to myself, and as well as my anxiety levels. And people say nurses are paid to care. I truly don't believe that. Yes, maybe some are paid to care, but the ones that I had on my journey, majority of them genuinely cared and had a real passion for what they were doing. So if you're a nurse, please do not underestimate the impact you're having on someone else's journey, or you could have on someone else's journey. Absolutely massive. Now the fun part, I get to mix the dry ingredients with the wet ingredients and add all the deliciousness. My camera's on a big wonky lens, so hope that's all right. Thirsty? Okay, let's do another one. Who is your biggest supporter? 100% my family, and Isaac. He's been a great support to me, but he wasn't, there throughout the really rough time in my life, but my family are definitely my biggest supporters. My sister has been a rock through it all. She was only 10 when I went into hospital first. She's 5 years younger than me. 10 or 9, I can't remember. 9, she's 5 years younger than me, yeah, because I was 14. So she didn't really know what was going on, but she was always there right by my side, trying to make me smile, trying to make me laugh. Her afternoons weren't like the normal kind of 9-year-olds coming up to the hospital and hanging out with her sick sister. My dad was incredible. My little dog Abby, she's my littlest, biggest supporter. She's tiny. I don't want to pick her up because I'm baking. And then my mum and dad. My mum is like my best friend in the world. She's my absolute rock. And her and dad were such crucial parts of my recovery. They were very tough with me. You know, they'd sit me down at the table and say, you're eating this and you're not leaving the table until you do. And that would sometimes take hours. But yeah, without them, I don't know where I would be. They fought for me because they weren't willing to lose their child. And I'll forever be grateful for that. Let's do another one before I add these oats. Do you find it hard to balance between taking care of yourself and others? This is definitely something I've learnt over the years, and I feel very lucky to have been able to learn. I'm also very aware that I need to put myself first and that self-care isn't selfish. If I'm not in a great place, then I'm not going to be very helpful to other people. So I'm really good now at balancing myself care as well as being able to help others. Having some strong boundaries in place in terms of, you know, turning my emails off at a certain time of night, you know, not checking social media all the time, you know, putting time aside to spend with my family and my friends, having time with Isaac. So I definitely am getting better at that. It's really hard, and Jazz will say the same, because we want to be able to help everyone and we can't. Yeah, it's been definitely a learning journey, but at the end of the day, you can't pour from an empty cup, and so I must come first. And by me being happy and well, it benefits you guys. So I'm good at taking a step back or taking a day off, or, you know, putting time aside for myself if I feel like a bit blah. Although I'm very well, I'm also a human being. And so I wake up some days and I'm like, this sucks, or, you know, today hasn't been a great day, or something happened at work or life or whatever it may be. So putting myself first is really important. And I love to work out, love to exercise, which again has been something that's come with recovery, has been amazing. I have a really healthy relationship with exercise now, and I do it now because I enjoy it, not because I feel like I have to. And I love doing group exercise, so I go to a gym where we all work out together, which for me, you know, is a really healthy way of exercising, because I'm around people. It's about socializing, it's about the fun community component of it too. So that's something that I love to do. Love taking showers, hanging out with my dog, going for walks. And I've just started colouring in and drawing, thanks to My Journey Starts Here. I've started doing that a lot, which I am loving. I'm cutting up some apricots. These are kind of biscuits that you can really add anything to. But I'm going to add some apricots, some raisins, and then obviously chocolate chips, white and brown. Are they called brown? Milk. Dark. These ones are dark actually. White and dark chocolate chips. And I'm going to do a few more questions because I don't have much to go on the biscuit front. And then I can answer the other ones in another video. What type of music do you like? I am the worst at music. Like, my sister is so onto it, and so is Isaac. Actually, they know music. Like, music is their thing. Whereas I'm like, whatever is on, I will enjoy. I'm not a fan of like classical. Yeah, honestly, anything. Do like High School Musical. I was obsessed with High School Musical. I was also obsessed with Jonas Brothers. Perhaps one day I'll show you my Jonas Brothers book, but I genuinely thought I was gonna marry Nick Jonas. What coping skills did you use for your anxiety? So again, exposure response therapy was really helpful for that. In terms of coping skills, I found breathing helpful, listening to music and like dancing and letting it all out, telling someone how I was feeling extremely helpful. Things like box breathing, so breathing in for 4, holding for 4, out for 4. That doesn't make a box. In, hold, out, hold. As well as clenching my fists and then releasing them, because it felt like the tension was being released in my body. I loved sleeping, and I probably did that a bit too much because I used it as a way to escape the pain, which I don't recommend, because the only way out is through. You need to be facing that head on. But I did what I needed to do at the time, and sleeping was involved in that. But yeah, my biggest ones were journaling. I did a lot of journaling, and I actually did a lot of arts and crafts. I was very crafty, which I learned to do when I was in hospital, because we had a play specialist, because we were in the children's hospital. We, as in me, myself and I, were in the children's hospital. And so as part of that, she'd come to our room every day and do like an art and craft activity with us. And then once I was on a certain level, I can tell you more about this in another video about hospital, but I was allowed to go to what was called the teen lounge, and we'd hang out there and play games, and there was like, I think it was a pool table or table tennis or something. Chocolate chips. So yeah, that was really cool when I was able to do that. But like, arts and crafts were a huge thing. And the school I went to in hospital, they had a hospital school. And we'd do like schoolwork in the morning, and then we'd go back up to the ward for lunch. And then from 1 till 3 p.m, we'd do, I'm just gonna check they're not poisonous. Art, every day. So yeah, arts and crafts were a huge coping skill for me. Talking, which I still love to do, if you haven't noticed. I'm just gonna check again. Reasons to recover, like I've said, you know, T charts, figuring out what my eating disorder is giving me, what is not. Recovery boards, I made a lot of vision boards. I had a placemat that I'd use at every meal, and that had my reasons to recover. And had pictures of places I wanted to travel to all over it. So that sort of stuff was really important for me. I have washed my hands again because hygiene is important, especially when around food. And now I'm gonna roll these bad boys. How good does that look? Oh, yum. I love oaty chocolatey biscuits, and these ones are just amazing. They're called Vanishing Oatmeal Raisin Cookies because they just vanish, like they go so quickly. What is one of the biggest misconceptions about OCD in your eyes? I think the big one for me was the fact that everyone thought because I had OCD, I was a really clean and tidy person, and that germs were a big fear of mine, etc. You know, there's such a stereotype that that's the way for everyone with OCD, and that's not the case at all. I'm not saying that it's not some people's experience, because it definitely is, but my OCD was all around numbers and checking and counting and some intrusive thoughts and symmetry. And so, you know, I didn't experience that. My mum would tell you that it was very messy and very unorganized, and everything was all over the show. So I wasn't what people think someone with OCD is, and I think it's really important to break those stereotypes and those myths because they're extremely damaging. I'm going to get another one. Pour them on the bench actually. How has my mental health been lately? I definitely have my moments, like we've been in lockdown for the last week, and sometimes I'm like, yay, this is so good. I've got like my whole family around me, and I've got time to kind of like chill out a bit more and can work from home. And then I'm like, actually, I just want to see my friends, and I feel lonely and sad. But all in all, my mental health's been really, really good, thank you. It's been a massive year for Voices of Hope, and it's only March. We launched an app resource, we launched our book. We've got a clothing line coming. I launched Love Your Kite, and there's some really exciting things happening in that space in terms of awareness around eating disorders and plans for the system here in New Zealand and hopefully abroad. So I'm feeling really good and on top of things. I feel really lucky. Maybe lucky's not the right word, but you know, as awful as that time was that I went through, and as hard as fighting mental illness was and is for anyone that experiences it, and we all experience it differently, I learned so much from that, and I'm in a place now where I can look back and kind of find the silver linings. And I know, had I not gone through that really difficult time, I possibly wouldn't have all the coping techniques and skills that I do now. And I've learned a lot of that through my journey, and especially with anxiety, because that's something I do still struggle with. But yeah, overall, my mental health has been really good lately, thank you. What made you decide to recover? This is an interesting question I get asked, because the position I was in, I was kind of somewhat thrown into it. So I was admitted to hospital, very unwell with anorexia nervosa, and I wasn't allowed to leave that hospital until I was in a much better place physically. But then again, in saying that, recovery is completely a choice. So I could have been admitted to hospital, I could have refused everything, but I didn't. I kind of surrendered to it. And that's not to say I didn't face anxiety and that I was 100% comfortable with it. But my life was so awful. I wasn't living. I was seeing my friends going out to parties and hanging out with boys and, you know, going out for dinners, and I was stuck in a hospital and I was too scared to eat breakfast. And, you know, I was looking at things like that and going, actually, my life right now sucks. What's the harm in trying? Like, surely recovery's got to be better than this. So it was a combination of things, and also having that support from my family. You know, there was no way they were going to let me stay that way. You know, they were going to, I don't want to say push me, but support me until I found it within myself to recover. And there's a quote I love, and it says, I will hold on to hope for you until you can find hope within yourself, something along the lines like that. And I really believe that's what my parents did. They held on to hope and they fought with me, or for me, until I was able to fight for myself. Would you have gone down a different path if you didn't have Voices of Hope? I think about this all the time, but I just feel so lucky that I found, I'm gonna try this. I know some people are a bit weird about raw baking, but leave me alone, I like it. But I feel so lucky that I found my purpose and my passion. I love what I do. When we started Voices of Hope, I mean, I guess we dreamed of it someday becoming a job and a full-time thing for us, but you know, it did seem pretty far away and pretty out of reach. And so It's a real honor to get to do this work. If I wasn't doing this, well, I went to drama school for 2 years in the United States, and acting's something I love doing, so perhaps I would have pursued that a bit more. Again, there's only so much you can do in that space, but I also wanted to be a TV presenter, so I wanted to be like a newsreader. I think that would have been so fun. So probably something in media and television, and I probably would have studied communications, which my sister just graduated from, or is about to graduate in March. She's finished. Because I've always had a passion for the film, television and media industry, whether it was in front of the camera or behind the camera. I'm gonna squash these, get another tray because there's way too many on this tray. Okay, so we're gonna put half of them on here. I can't count. I feel like I've made these huge, but I feel like they're gonna be even nicer that way. I'm gonna go, oh! These look so good. Okay, these are good to go. So, I'm gonna put them in the oven for 10 to 12 minutes. They don't even take long. Now the boring part, doing the dishes. Thank you guys so much for joining me for part 1 of my Q&A. I have a lot of questions left, but we finished baking cookies and I don't want this to go on for 5 hours, so we're gonna stop there. But I hope you found that enjoyable and a bit different from normal Q&As that I do. I just wanted to mix it up. But yeah, I'll be back for part 2 soon, and I hope you're having an amazing day. Keep fighting. I will talk to you soon. Bye guys.